What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again for Football Beyond the Stats and our movement play of the week. Now, typically, I wouldn't do a movement play of the week in the National Football League preseason. However, I felt as though after going to the video format last year of these breakdowns, of these analysis, is it does definitely have to require a little bit more from the sport movement analyst, right? Like, so if I'm going to dive into telling this movement problem solving story of players on a National Football League Sunday, I have to get my own skills recalibrated. I have to kind of get back into my groove. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here in the preseason over a couple of plays. First, starting out with the first full week of the NFL preseason, here with the Carolina Panthers and the Washington football team Commanders. And now I am fully admitting that I'm going to try to keep these a little shorter than I typically would. I'm not going to dive into the collation of constraints nearly to the same depth or degree as I typically would during the NFL regular season. I'm doing that for a number of different reasons, but I'm just essentially trying to get my groove back, if you will. And I hope that you, as a viewer, are able to glean something from this and you're able to put yourself back into the human movement system of players once again as you watch players perform in the competitive environment. So we're going to kind of go through these thought experiments together. We're going to go through some of those growing pains again together. And hopefully we're able to kind of peel back the layers on some things while it's unfolding here in the NFL preseason. So by the time September rolls around and the regular season gets here, both you and I have our groove back. So we're going to get into today a play by a rookie and rookie quarterback for the Washington Commanders, Sam Howell. Now, I'm fully admitting here, I don't know the first thing about Sam Howell, okay? As a rookie, as I've said before, most rookies, I'm not overly well suited to critique or analyze. The reason is I'm primarily spend the majority of my time looking into National Football League players and the movement skill that is emerging on a National Football League Sunday. But Sam Howell, I do know that he is a quarterback out of North Carolina, and he was picked in the 5th round of the National Football League draft. But I have not seen him play much, if at all, to be quite honest with you, up until this past weekend in the first week of the NFL preseason. But this play was just too nifty and he showed too much shiftiness for us to go without paying attention and giving notice to. So in true Football Beyond Stats type of fashion, we're going to get into it from a number of different views, this sideline view, as well as then the view from behind, and we're going to go through it at a number of different speeds as well. I want to highlight for you, again, just as we have in previous years, maybe this is your first time here looking at some of the things that we're doing with our movement analysis at Football Beyond the Stats. We want to really try to peel back the layers of the dynamics between the problem and the solution, okay? And the changing states of organization between the dispositional problem that is emerging dynamically and with complexity for National Football League players, and how that solution also emerges and flows from the problem in its disposition, the information that is present there that one will use and pick up and detect to guide their movement actions, but also then the affordances that are present, the opportunities to act for the player that are present from that dispositional problem or the information that is specifying those affordances. So without further ado, let's get into this play. We're going to watch it at full speed at least 1 or 2 times through from this viewpoint. And I'll try not to hit the clicker too many times so we can see it in full speed here. Let's go back one more time and watch it. You can see a couple of things here that I want to mention. I know that I told you I wouldn't hit the clicker or the pause button too many times. Realize I'm going to call some of the elephants in the room here. This is the 4th quarter of the first preseason game. So many players on this football field aren't going to make the NFL 53-man roster. Okay. So on each of these respective teams, many of these players are likely not to make their respective roster. That tells us that the information may be scaled down a bit. Okay. Typically, when I want to address movement skill with a player, especially new or novel, creative, or maybe more authentic movement skill for a player when they first get to me, the first thing I do is present representative problems, but ones that are scaled down in the amount of either complexity or intensity and information that is present there. This is a perfect learning canvas for Sam Howell as a rookie quarterback. Okay. He's the third string quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Obviously, being a draft pick, even in the 5th round, he's likely to make this roster. But many of the guys that he's playing against and with here will not. The second thing that I want to pay attention to here is this is happening at Washington's home field. Now, granted, the score really doesn't matter all that much right here. But what it does matter for these players is there's tremendous pressure and anxiety because all these guys are fighting for roster spots. So that's going to up the ante for each one of these players. When you're the offensive player, you are certainly at an advantage in many of these cases because you can get guys to bite on certain things that they might not if they're just playing a little looser, a little freer. But many of these players who are fighting for roster spots, let's be real here. Pressure and anxiety is at its highest. These are the biggest moments of each one of these players' careers up to this point, because if they get cut on this respective roster, they may not get another chance. Third thing that we want to pay attention to, Washington's field at FedEx Field is absolute trash and garbage. Okay. Now, in August, when it's early in the year, it might not be as bad as it typically would be. Maybe if we saw it in October and November and December. Hell, Washington typically doesn't play in January. So you only really have to concern yourself with those 2 or 3 months into the season and what it looks and feels like. It's typically trash. Here, probably not as bad, but still probably not all that good either. Okay. So advantage goes to the offensive player because he is in control. He is seeing the things that are unfolding, and the defensive player is often along for the ride. Okay. So sorry for that long-winded ranting. Let's watch it in full speed one more time from this sideline view. And you can see this nifty juke. We're going to watch it in through to the end zone view here, because I think this will give us some things that we'll be able to pay attention to from the sideline view when we break it down into slow motion. So let's watch it at full speed here, and then we'll get up into our 50% speeds. Okay. That is a dirty, filthy move. Okay. And I don't care if you're playing against second stringers. I don't care if you're playing against starters. I don't care who it is that you're playing against on a National Football League Sunday. You get into these 1v1 situations that run rampant for NFL skill players, particularly now the new more athletic and mobile quarterbacks. When they break the pocket and looking to be a playmaker, information movement coupling in these 1v1 performance dyadic relationships are vital and key. We would also think about it for running backs, obviously running between the tackles in a little different problem situations and scenarios than maybe a Sam Howell will be here after he drops back to pass, sees a landscape of opportunities, aka affordances, open up for him. Okay. But quarterbacks, running backs, they really can't experience too many of these exact 1v1 type of problems. And these are the very problems that I have suggested here over the years at Football Beyond the Stats that NFL coaches include more of. These alive type of movement problems where a skilled ball carrier is moving in space versus an opponent. Okay. So now 50% speed. I think we're going to be able to see a little bit more from the other view. Okay. But we will also be able to see some things here, primarily as this play breaks down. Obviously, we know that quarterbacks, as they enter the league, the game is still moving really quickly and rapidly for them. They are a little bit more apt to run, as we maybe saw with Malik Willis in week 1 of the preseason of the Tennessee Titans. We saw it 2 years ago, or now it would be 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, with Lamar Jackson when he was a rookie early in the preseason. When the play breaks down, it's not even breaking down yet, right? He should still be going looking through his reads, but they are very quick to run. He sees just enough opportunity here to move through this hole in this gap, and he zeroes in on that respective linebacker. That respective linebacker, I think, is number 46, third string linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. Likely not going to make the team. Maybe if he does, it'll be from a special team standpoint or maybe the practice squad or something of that nature. I think he's a rookie as well. And so what we're finding here is that in these types of scenarios and situations, again, look at here, the 46 is not even on the picture, guys and gals. Okay. I think he's something like 14 and a half to 15 yards away here. Sam Howell's not even back to the line of scrimmage, which obviously would be represented here by this blue line. Okay. So there's a significant interpersonal distance between the ball carrier and the nearest opponent and defender. Okay. That's a tremendous amount of time to carry out one's intentions. Okay. And to actually pick up information about the behaviors of the defender, which again, we're going to be able to see from the other view. So I won't belabor the point here as much. But now we find, well, shit, not we finally see him. We haven't seen him yet. The only guy that we did see was one frame before that when we see the teammate come into the mix here, who isn't really given a whole heck of a lot of effort, but he's letting this two-way go. What do I mean by that? Or what am I looking at here? This two-way go essentially emerge, okay, from the left side to the right side of the defender. Okay. Here we see number 46 already coiling, already anchoring, and essentially he should keep coming forward. He should be closing that gap, knowing full well when we see it from the other view, there's a lot of space to the left and to the right. Okay. But he, number 46, has already stopped his feet because he's kind of dead to rights. His movement system has become fixed and frozen. So his perceptions, his intentions, and ultimately his actions here, he's just trying to settle himself like, oh crap, I am in Never Never Land. And obviously, here's a quarterback on fellow rookie who's coming in and might put me on his poster. And he does put him, right? So we see this now. And some things that I want to point out. Okay. Look at where Sam Howell's eyes are. Oops. Again, this is why we do this. This is why we do the preseason edition as much as I need it. Just like players need it and need to get reattuned and recalibrated to the specifying information and the problems of their world. So do I. Okay. Watch where the ball fake comes and how the ball fake here on this side, on this viewpoint, and before we go to the other viewpoint, actually corresponds to what may happen in the behaviors of 46. So again, 50%. Look at him, just this little like Euro step, this little hop stop here, right here, and he gives this ball fake action. Like he's already past the line of scrimmage, right? But again, if you have a defender, I don't care what position they play, if they are not at the highest level of skill and mastery, like there's going to be indecision and doubt that comes over their mind here in this situation because they can't really tell from a perspective standpoint as to where the line of scrimmage may be. Like he can't throw the football now. He's past the line of scrimmage, and maybe Sam Howell himself is unaware as to where that line of scrimmage is. He's just out there now essentially playing backyard football, right? But this little hop stop into this ball fake, right? Into this slight little pump fake, then settles the feet of 46 here as I circle my mouse around him. And this creates an affordance. This creates an opportunity to the left and to the right. And again, we're going to be able to see it more clearly on the other view, right? But there are big gaping gaps to the left and to the right of 46, and there isn't anything happening behind him. All these layers of information create or channel the affordances which are most relevant. We also have the elephant in the room here, which is this amount of interpersonal distance. Let me get my this amount of interpersonal distance, the advantage definitely is with number 14, Sam Howell here, okay? At what would be about 8 yards ish. That's a significant, not even a metastable region. He has a significant advantage here, okay? He being Sam Howell. And so as we kind of get ourselves back into this groove, we see that 46 then has to kind of go into panic mode to give himself even the slightest attempt at a tackle. Like if we look at him jump back to what would be his right to Sam Howell's left, when we see that unfold, once that happens and occurs, and we look at this posture, again, we'll be able to see it better from the other view. So I'm just highlighting some things here now so we can look for it later. Once he moves from left to right, Howell now knows that 46 is essentially stuck into a place where he can't get out of very well. And the expectation here for Howell is that now he has him not only dead to rights, but frozen in his steps rather, and kind of like he's going to be in this panic zone. Okay, he's going to be in this panic mode, if you will. And obviously, if we look at 46, his kinematics, his positions, his patterns that he's attempting to execute from are not a very efficient or effective one. Like this extreme crossover, I'm going to try to go a little bit more frame by frame here. Watch him now try to go from right to left here. Like this position is just a last ditch effort to lay out and hope that he gets a piece of Sam Howell, which obviously he does not, because Sam Howell has the calibration essentially to how he needs to move and what he has to do to exploit the amount of space that is afforded to him. Okay, hopefully all of that makes some sense for y'all. And as we get now into the other view, we're going to be able to see things a little bit more clearly. Number one, you're going to see the amount of space. This isn't a highly complex problem at the National Football League level. Number two, you're going to see how the interpersonal distance, as well as the posture and kinematics of one's immediate opponent, as well as gaps in interpersonal distance that exist in those gaps to the left and to the right of the respective defender, and what exists deeper and longer within the problem, those are all informational variables, information sources that the offensive skill player is combining, guys and gals, to channel the movement behavior that emerges for them. Okay, so what they are perceiving, how they are intending to act into the decisions that they make, and ultimately the way that they coordinate and organize their actions is all being channeled, regulated, and coordinated based on this informational pickup. That's why we can't do too much of these 1v1 situations. And I'm going to show you how we could easily manipulate this and the constraints around it in a practice setting to make both performers more functional, more successful at these types of interactions. You could see the space, okay? We couldn't tell this before, but look at all this space that opens up for Howell. So he, as he's perceiving this now, we can see based on the stripe on his helmet, right? We can't see where his visual eye gaze is. We don't have an eye tracker on him, obviously, but we see right here, right now, that there is a lot of space, and that space is calling for him. That space is beckoning a young quarterback who has the athleticism to move into that space and to do something with it, particularly in the open field, and particularly if they only got to make one guy miss. And that's exactly what happens here with Sam Howell. Okay. So this back foot hits the ground and he's like not hesitating. So one thing that we would see is that this guy right here, this receiver is his, may have been, I'm guessing that the Washington football staff, even though Sam Howell scores here, I'm guessing that they might have wanted him to take that chance so he can have some learning and some growth that would, that would happen here in a competitive environment to try to make some of these throws, make some of these reads, but instead the instincts take over, right? And ultimately he becomes a backyard football player, wants to go put somebody on his poster, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Again, when we have a stripe on a helmet, look at my mouse around Sam Howell's helmet here. Okay. We can't see his eyes. Unfortunately, we don't have eye tracking glasses on him, but we can make informed speculation as to what he's seeing. So he gets right up into that acceleration. He goes at number 46. Okay. When they both make this decision and 46 plants his foot, let me go one frame back. I'm too quick on the trigger here. So right here, I want you guys to look at how much space is between 14 and 46. Okay. We're talking about 15 plus yards. Not only do we have that amount of space that is present, but let's get some stars out. Okay. We know that this guy is obviously the immediate defender who Sam Howell will be in this 1v1 interaction with. This receiver is headed on an outbreaking route, and this defender is now in coverage with him. So Sam Howell knows that he has a lot of space to work and operate in. And if you look at this space, he understands that if he makes 46 miss and he only has to make that guy miss, that space is there for the taking. Okay. And it is just too inviting for him to pass up. Now, notice he's not across the line of scrimmage yet. He's got about 2 or 3 yards to go yet right now before he would go across that line of scrimmage. So that pump fake is still on the table for him, even though he hits it a little late. I think he has it in his intentions, his aim to act in a given way, that if I get this guy to freeze in any way, shape, or form, there's not even anyone else on the screen at this part, guys and gals. And look at how much space this is if you've ever been on a football field. If you look at the space between the hashes and from left to right, like this is a tremendous amount of space. Okay. 25, 30-ish yards minimum. Okay. So if you can't make one guy miss as a skilled ball carrier in this type of scenario, you're probably not going to stay in the league for long, or at least you're not going to be able to exploit its affordances very well. So now we see that little hop stop, and look at 46's posture. Look at how his kinematics are being organized to come into that space. He gives the pump fake and it freezes him. Okay. Let's look at this. Remember, as we always say from a J.J. Gibson 1979, behavior affords behavior. So how our immediate opponents act sets up the affordances as to how we might be able to act. And I'm going to watch this on repeat here a few times because I don't want you guys to miss 46's behaviors and what it would do to Sam Howell's behaviors. Okay. If Sam Howell is closely coupled to the information about 46's body posture, his mechanics, his kinematics, his actions, combined with interpersonal distance between the two of them, combined with those other information sources about the gaps and maybe the information that lies beyond. I mean, he knows nobody else is back there, right? So we see it here. He knows there's one guy to beat, guys and gals. Okay. So if he can get this guy to freeze, which that pump fake does, he pumps it and then goes down to his left and right back to his right when he sees 46 go from left to right. Hopefully that makes some sense, and hopefully I'm not confusing you. If I am, I promise I will get better as the season goes on. So when he sees 46 go from left to right, plant this left foot down and move to his right as Howell moves in that direction. He is closely connected and coupled to bringing that movement back. In a crossover fashion, 46 has no chance. He might get just the tip of his fingers just the tip of his fingers on them. Let's watch it one more time through. And then I want to talk about how we might be able to manipulate constraints here if we're the sport movement specialist who is trying to train either side of this, trying to set up a problem that looks, feels, acts, and behaves like this. Okay. So let me get to about right here. Okay. So if we're talking about constraint manipulation, guys and gals, I've often talked about how simplistic this could be and how it could unfold and how we could manipulate constraints in a progressive fashion to set up changing problems that have repetition without repetition, where no two problems would be the same and neither would any two solutions. But it would give the opportunity for players to become more tuned and adaptable to these 1v1 interactions. Okay. I would like to see problems set up, probably not quite this much space. Okay. Because this isn't often going to happen in the National Football League, at least to this degree. So if you remember last year, I would often use these stars to maybe set up where I would put cones. And remember, in my world, cones are just boundaries. My cones aren't telling someone where or how they should move, nor am I telling the player how it is that I want them to move, maybe like someone else. But if we look at how big this space may be based on this interaction, okay, this is 20 yards long or deep and probably about 15 yards-ish wide, okay? I usually start that tunnel with a little tighter space, anywhere from probably 5 to 10 yards wide, and usually 15-ish yards, maybe 10 to 15 yards-ish long. So this space in these 1v1 interactions, the advantage clearly goes to the offensive player. But I like to have it a little bit more closely matched, so it brings both offensive player and defensive player closer to their challenge point. Number 46 is in a place where he's at a true disadvantage here. Okay. The offensive player has a lot of space to go and explore. But what we could do, guys and gals, is first constraint that we can manipulate is that space where, again, no two problems are the same, where maybe one rep, we would have this big wide open space that would be the workspace. I mean, look at how big of space that truly is, right? Okay. And the second thing that we could do is then tighten it up, widen it out, lengthen it out, shorten it up. So again, rep to rep to rep, the problem looks, feels, acts, and unfolds very differently. Okay. The second thing that we could look to do is change the position of the defender and where he would be entering that space from. Okay. So if one problem, it behaves in this way where he's coming, at this angle head on, the very next play, the very next problem that we could set up, maybe we would have him start here and come directly straight head on into the space. That would create new affordances to the left and to the right for both players, right? We could have this player, 46, enter the space. Again, imagine if, I wish there was a way to keep my cones set up here. Again, here's my cones. Let's just call it this. Okay. Let's just call it that, somewhere close to the same. Okay. And I'll just start drawing some things on. We could have this defender enter the space maybe here. Okay. Or again, enter from there. Enter at an angle, enter down the pipe, enter in the way that he is. We could have him start somewhere in the middle of this. So there would be more of a closer interaction to begin with. Okay. This is just if I were to have an offensive skill player and a defensive player, such as a linebacker. Okay. I'm not instructing them as to how to move, but we're setting up and manipulating constraints. We're setting up a problem and then manipulating constraints to change the problem in a repetition without repetition fashion each and every time. Okay. The other thing that we could do is obviously change the opponent. Okay. So who the player, the skilled offensive player with the ball in their hand would have to become attuned to would be the behaviors, the mannerisms, the skill set, the craft, the movement style of a different defender rep to rep to rep to rep, right? So in a similar behaving problem, facing different opponents who are going to behave differently. Remember, behavior affords behavior. And finally, the thing that we could do is turn this from a 1v1 problem to either a 1v2 problem where there would be two defenders, maybe one starting here and the other one starting on this cone, and they're crashing in and converging into that workspace. Or we could turn it from a 2v2 scenario situation where we have a guy starting here, where 46 would start here, and maybe we would have a guy start there, or really anywhere in the workspace, guys and gals, and we would have one of these offensive linemen entering this space. Do I still have my arrow on? So maybe this offensive lineman would enter the space here, or that one would enter the space after a blocking interaction. So now all of a sudden it has a more representative feel. There is more layers of information and it just nudges up in level of complexity of this respective problem. So there are plenty of ways here to set up movement problems that are going to look, feel, act, and unfold as they would on a National Football League Sunday. Guys, I don't think that NFL coaches do this nearly as much as they probably could or should in the training camp environment. And we're seeing that unfold in the numerous clips on social media. But it's really easy to manipulate constraints so these types of problems are presented to players and players can become much more attuned and adaptable to the information that's present in the behaviors of opponents in this way. Now, I know I said our video was going to be short today. Obviously, if you guys know me, you know that I never really do anything in a condensed fashion. So we should have probably had that hint to begin with. Hopefully, you saw me knock some mud off the tires for myself, shake off the cobwebs, if you will, knock the dust off. And hopefully your lens and your eye will start to get kind of back calibrated, just as mine will, just as my analysis continues to kind of hopefully improve and become more polished again as we get closer and closer to week 1 of the National Football League season. So for Football Beyond the Stats, I'm the Movement Miyagi, and I will see you again next time for our next movement play of the week.